Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners, and I am the co-founder of Eversound, which was acquired by Uniguest, which is a company committed to developing engagement technologies to help communities connect and improve the quality of life for older adults. Today, I'm joined by my friend Amber Bardon, the founder and CEO of Parasol Alliance. Amber is the person I trust the most when it comes to anything senior living technology. And I do have to say, and this is on the record, she is one of the coolest people I know in the industry. Definitely top three, I would say. But Amber, thanks so much for coming on today and really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Matt. I'm so excited to be back on the show.
Yeah. Episode number two. We might have to turn this into a series, but we'll see. We'll see. But Amber, for those listeners that did not listen to episode one, I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit about yourself and what gaps you saw in the industry that inspired you to start Parasol Alliance.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, believe it or not, I've been in senior living for almost 18 years now, which is a long time, a little crazy to think about. But I started off my senior living career by working for a provider. So, I did that for 9 years. And I worked all different levels of IT support for that company, from business system support, help desk, IT director, things like that, project management. And I really got to learn and understand the industry from the ground up. So I'd come in third shift and train nurses on medical record systems, worked on home care implementations, dining system implementations, things like that. So did that for about 9 years, and then saw a need to start a company to specifically take what I was doing at that provider and bring it to a broader audience. So founded Parasol Alliance almost 9 years ago. And we're actually owned by 5 providers. So our owners are 5 not-for-profit communities in Wisconsin and Chicago. And essentially, what we do is we are a full service technology partner exclusively for senior living. So we only work in this industry. And what makes us a little bit different is we begin every engagement with our clients with a strategic assessment. So we're looking at things like technology operations, culture, innovation, resident technology, all the business applications, network systems, security. And then we're putting together a roadmap. So a plan in which a client can understand how do they actually execute technology by what priority, and what are the resources in terms of time and dollars it's going to take to execute that plan. And we become their partner to not only do all the day-to-day IT operations. So we do on-site support and service desk and engineering and business applications. We also execute the roadmap through the contract through project management. So not only are we doing all the day-to-day IT operations, but we're also moving strategy forward and considering innovation and things like that to really be that true technology partner.
I love that. And it's so needed too, just based on the gaps I've seen in the industry. And it's really cool to hear your story where it sounded like you kind of did a little bit of everything on your journey on the provider side and got that firsthand experience and able to kind of incorporate that into what you guys are doing today. And I'm wondering, like, how does Parasol Alliance just really approach the custom designing solutions to meet specific client needs? And if you could just, provide an example of a successful customization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is a really important point. And I think this is something that not a lot of vendors are doing out there. And I would encourage anyone who's listening who has a partner or a solution that's not looking at customizing your design and your approach to what fits for you and is trying to sell you a solution without understanding that, please get multiple options, because I have seen it over and over and over where clients are not getting systems and solutions that are in their best interest, but is in the vendor's best interest who's trying to sell that product or solution to them. So for me personally, that's what really drove our business model and how we help customize each approach. So each approach starts with that custom strategic assessment, which is specifically based on the community's strategic goals, their objectives, things they want to do, things that are a priority, built around their infrastructure and end of life and things like that. But we identify what are the major pain points, and then what are the steps we want to take to address those. So for example, if I'm at a site and I'm doing interviews and I hear that a big pain point might be the medical record system. So our recommendation would be to do a medical records analysis project. Let's just take that as an example. So what we would do is we would want to work with the client and really fully understand what are the requirements of what the system is supposed to be doing for you. And we do that by meeting with stakeholders across the community. So we would meet with each area of the company that's using that product, and we would build a detailed list of requirements and functions that that system's supposed to be doing. And then we would score them by priority and how important these functions are. And we can do this for any type of system. We've done it for nurse call, resident engagement, phone systems, any business application. So you get the idea. We've done over 700 of these projects. So the next step is we've identified what specifically is the need for this client. And I want to say integrations is a really big part of that, because we want to avoid having system sprawl and having a lot of different systems where there's multiple data entries. A complaint I hear all the time is I have 20 passwords I have to remember. So we really want to make sure integrations is part of this requirements analysis. So we take that and then we will submit it to multiple vendors. We give the vendors a chance to respond and to score the requirements analysis, send that back to us. And then we take all that data and we build a score sheet. So we put those systems side by side and we do a percentage score of how well they're matching those requirements. So a score by each section and then overall score. And then we also write RFP analysis. So then we'll take, because that's a lot of data in those spreadsheets. So then we'll actually write out for the client, this is how the different systems scored. These are the things they can do, can't do, their strengths, weaknesses against each other. And we also get a high level cost analysis. So we do all of this before we even do any demos, so that by the point in time in which we get to demos, we've got a lot of data and information in front of us, because we've all been on a demo by a salesperson and they could do a really, really great demo and sort of overwhelm you with their great sales processes and their great salespeople like you, Matt. But that may not answer the specific questions of what do I really need this system to do? So by going through this process before you get to a demo, you can identify these are the specific things that you answered in the RFP that maybe we want to see more of or we want to see explained, and you can actually write a demo planning document to give the vendor to show you before you get on that demo.
Yeah, it's super, super important. And it's funny now that, before at Eversound, we got the RFP or those requests for proposals, few and far between, but now definitely been more involved on the Uniguest side. And it's been pretty cool to see your guys' approach to that. And I know you kind of like highlighted a little bit, but is there anything else to add in terms of Parasol Alliance approach to that RFP process and really just making sure you're aligning it with those client goals?
Yeah, I think we start with that scorecard. From there, we work with the client to identify, are there any vendors that came out of this process that maybe we want to drop at this point? And the reason a vendor could get dropped is generally because the price comes in significantly higher. We do understand these are initial pricing, so it's not final pricing, but if it's really obviously much higher than everybody else, that would be, I would say, a red flag. And that's not always cutting them from the process, but it can. Or they score really low on the functionality, or it's a combination high price, low functionality. So it helps the client sort of narrow down which vendors they want to look at. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the client still wants to look at every single vendor. So from there, we do the demos, like I mentioned, and we recommend a demo planning session to make sure you get the best, the most you can out of those demos. After those initial demos, we then like to regroup with our clients, have a meeting, talk about what do they like, what do they not like, what questions they still have. And then we try to narrow it down to our top 2 vendors at that point. And sometimes that can be difficult. Maybe there's a clear one that looks better than the others, or maybe you have 3 that look good. We try to get to that 2. And generally by that point, those 2 systems are probably pretty similar. So we want to see like, what are the differentiators that's going to help us make a decision between those 2. And that's where we feel that reference checks are really come into play. And so it's really important in any case, I think, to talk to references of people who've used the system. And if you have people in your community you can reach out to that weren't given to you by the vendor, I think that's always really great. We recommend asking, we have a set of reference questions to ask, but things like, how was what you were sold compared to what you have? How was the implementation process? How's support? And then of course, any of those system functionality questions you'd want to ask. So those references can really be the deciding factor sometimes. And also at this point, we're doing a detailed cost analysis. So we got the initial cost analysis. Now we're going to go back, sit down with the vendor, price it out to make sure we have the accurate quote. And then we can kind of compare all that information, and hopefully the client can make a decision at that point.
Yeah, I love just the overall scope and just how much detail you guys are getting, right? Because I think too many times, to your point, right? Like you get a sales guy or a girl on the line, they're just kind of showing the bells and whistles, can kind of, charm you to some degree and are really just trying to win you over. And then ultimately, there's definitely salespeople out there that lie too, right? Of like what they can actually do and delivering. And I find a lot of overpromise and under delivering, which is never good. I mean, it doesn't set up anybody for success. And I know with one of those things, right? And I'm curious, like, if, in your opinion, right? A lot of these providers will go to trade shows. There's people like me that are standing on the trade show floor wearing like Star Trek outfits and just trying to like drive people in. But like, what would you say is fundamentally broken about the conference experience when it comes to showcasing new technology, and how should it be addressed?
Well, I think the conferences are really great for getting an idea of what's out there. But I think it's also very easy to get sort of carried away with that. So I think getting an idea of what's out there and what vendors you might want to include in the process is a really great tool and function of the conferences. But I think once you've identified that, taking it back and then actually going through the requirements to make sure that you are picking the best system for yourself or for your community. And I do want to mention one other thing that's sort of related to this process, but not really, Matt. And that's, is this even the right time to be putting a system like this in place? I think that analysis has to happen too, because again, you may go to a conference, let's say you see a falls management system, you're super excited about it, and you want to go back and buy this falls management system, but maybe you don't have the Wi-Fi infrastructure to support it. Or maybe there's other priority items that, the resources and dollars should be spent on first before something like this innovation. And so I think it's important. This kind of goes back to that strategic plan, is like, what is the right time to implement a new system or change your system? So you need to consider your current system contract dates if you have them. What's the infrastructure you need to support it? What are any other staff time and resources, integrations, other systems it has to talk to? So kind of thinking about even more big picture than just that specific system and that specific vendor. Where does this fit in my overall priority list for technology?
Yeah, I've definitely have heard that from other providers, right? They'll go and see kind of the bells and whistles of a new product. And I've even seen some situations where they look to start doing it and then they have a conversation internally like, wait, this isn't even a problem here. Like, why are we trying to go and get this? And really trying to create that infrastructure too, right? I mean, I think we all know, everyone that listens to this with any familiarity with senior living know the Wi-Fi problems that exist here today. And I
Yeah.
know, so we kind of talked about your RFP process and really taking some of these new technology companies through that evaluation. But like, what would you suggest to a senior living provider to really do that true evaluation of that new technology? Like, what you hit on some of it, but is there anything else to add to that?
Uh, I think you have to, it's helpful to have a project manager who can manage this for you. Because you want to make sure something, a, a problem I hear at sites that I go to is that the right people are not involved. So I'll just give a common example. You're evaluating a point of sale system, and the dining people look at the point of sale and they do demos and they pick a system, but no one included billing. And there's a billing component to every point of sale. And I hear that a lot. And now billing is stuck with like, we have to just figure out how to make this work. And then there's a lot of discontent, like, well, we weren't involved. We didn't want this system. It was forced on us. And so I think making sure you have the right stakeholders and everyone who needs to touch the system involved really helps, because you're going to have a lot more success if you can get that buy-in and transparency up front for your change management for implementation later.
Yeah, it's a great point too. I find like almost over communicating and almost looking at like a racy matrix when it comes to some of this stuff of like who's responsible, who's accountable, who's informed, and who's consulted. It's super important too, because I've definitely have seen situations of even just getting Eversound in communities, right? They did not talk to certain people, and then they're like, "Why are we getting this?" Or like, "What is this about?" Or like, "I don't even know what this is for." So just kind of that re-education piece, and then there's always some resistance because they're like, "Oh, well, why didn't they include me in that?" And then you start playing those internal politics, which just definitely doesn't set anybody up for success, unfortunately. Um, and my last question here for you, Amber, what qualities do you believe are essential in a custom partner for IT solutions, particularly in contexts requiring like adaptable levels of care, communities spread out all over the country? Like, what do you think is essential for that?
Well, I think going back to what I said earlier, I think the number one quality we're looking for here is a partner who's not going to push a solution on you. a partner that's going to listen to what you want, your timeline, your budget, and be able to offer you more than one solution. You always want to be careful of who's benefiting from what's being proposed. Is somebody making money off of this if you do it this certain or specific way? And if they are, I would always just question a little bit more, why is it this one product that's being pushed on me? So I think it's really important to have a vendor neutral partner, and one that's going to offer you multiple solutions, and one that is based on what they're hearing from you that you want. And then I think secondly, definitely a partner who knows the industry. They're not just going to give you a cookie cutter template for a payroll system, but it's going to include things like shift differentials and the scheduling aspect and things that are really specific, because there's so many options and so many systems out there. But as we know, senior living is different and it does have specific needs. So having a partner who can understand that, and again, going back to the integrations piece and how all these different systems talk to each other, I think is really critical as well.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think the cookie cutter approach just doesn't work. I mean, I've even seen communities down the road from each other, even within the same corporate structure, and they're completely different. I mean, in terms of like what they need and like what they can do to set them up for success. And well, Amber, I know our listeners will get a lot out of this. I really appreciate all the passion you put in this industry and all that you do for your partners and the greater good too. And dare I say, Amber, the senior living tech whisperer. I feel like that's a good nickname for you almost. But thanks so much for our time today, and appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
If you'd like to know when we post the next episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're interested in how Eversound can help improve the quality of life in your community, find out more at eversoundhq.com.